episode 8 of TED Talks. I'm here with Andy today.
Good evening, everyone.
We're just going to dive straight into this one, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's not intro it. Let's just dive straight in.
Yeah. Apologies for the break again, but obviously we've both been very busy. Scott's had a lot on. I've had a lot on, and it's this time of year, isn't it, when it just goes crazy.
Yeah.
Weather's been nice. Lovely day today. It's supposed to be the hottest day of the year. So
getting this one out early.
Yeah, get this one out early. I said good evening because it feels like evening time.
By the time I post it, it will be anyway. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope you're all doing well. I think with this one, it's just a case of we'll see where it goes. I've been listening and reading quite a lot since the last podcast, and it's funny how things again fall into place with what you look, and especially if we're doing a podcast, how things then fall into place, because this is really just about a journey of sharing your own experiences with what your relationship with the world and how everything is unfolding, and that's been it's incredible how when you're aware how things fall into place. Have you found that yourself?
Yeah, recently I think I mentioned it on the last podcast as well, but probably the last 2 or 3 months, just certain things, it's almost like it's instantaneous now. It's like you think about these things and they fall into place right away for you.
Yeah.
And I've just told you about something else that we're hoping falls into place this
week,
so we'll see.
Indeed. Whereas, and the other thing, of course, is we've got our house up for sale and we're looking at selling that. So it's been a really busy time with that. So that hasn't given us much free time because you're tidying the house for viewings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And on that point, it's like, okay, well, surely if you're creating your own reality, you can just simply sell it because that's what this is the whole point and how subtle the game can be. Because we got an offer over what we were asking for, and the estate agent had already said, we think you're asking a bit too much, but you can try it.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, the house is bang, it's got everything here. It's a really nice place. Everything's been done really nicely to high standards, etc. We think we'll be all right. We got an offer over and above in the first week, but then it just went cold. And the guy was he even came around a second time and he was so interested, he was so keen. And then it went cold, and there was one aspect that my wife, as a thought process, had in about the sale of the house. One aspect that she didn't tell me about and that she had in her field, and it fell through. Now, you could say, "Oh, what are you on about? That's just
one of those things."
Of those things, etc. But I know how the game works.
Yeah.
I've seen it too often. Do you know what I mean? And you just think, shit, it was there.
Yeah.
But on the other side, we hadn't found anywhere, so maybe it wasn't the right time. But it's just so subtle. And of course, if someone's not really brought into how subtle it is, then it can just be poo-pooed away.
Yeah.
But
100% learning from you, I've realised how subtle it is.
Yeah.
It's literally like little minor thoughts that you might not even become aware of.
Yeah.
But somebody else has taken note that you've said it, and then it's
Yeah.
that's already in the field, and then you're creating that reality there.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is going off on a little bit of a tangent, but at the same time, it isn't. Because yesterday, I had my first interaction with Alexa.
Okay. Yeah.
Never ever hear other people saying Alexa. Do you know what I mean? I've never done it, but in the house I'm working at the moment, they're not there all day. And she said, "Oh, the radio's there." And I'm like, "Where's the radio?" And it's just like, and then I heard the grandmother come in one day and start talking to Alexa and put the radio on. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Well, yesterday I forgot my phone, so normally I have my entertainment, my podcast playing, not my podcast, but other podcasts playing whilst I'm working. And I thought, oh, do you know what? I'll put the radio on. So that was my first interaction with Alexa.
Yep.
Do you know what? I can see why these relationships take place.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't answer back.
She done what she was
She
told.
done what she was told, and I'm just thinking, see why people like this woman. She's very much in
Yeah,
demand. Um,
that's the only trouble. She's in demand. Everyone wants her.
there you go. So anyway, I am joking aside. It was, you can see how people just get caught in. But what are you doing in that moment?
Hmm.
You're taking your own power away. You're giving it away to something else. Okay, you just ask them to put the radio on. Just ask them what the time is. Ask them what the temperature is. But it doesn't matter. But the
Yeah,
point is, you're still giving. It's an empowerment thing, and you're
yeah.
giving your power away. So again, it's only subtle,
Hmm.
but
But with AI, that's where it's going
no, absolutely,
because it's every you then rely on something else to do everything for you.
yeah,
So then you lose your power, your skill, everything.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. So yesterday, like late last night, a feed came up on YouTube about life in the 70s. Were you a child of the 70s? And it was a 12-minute, 15-minute video on what life was like in the 70s and the
Okay.
80s. And I've put it on, and it's just such a different world.
Hmm.
Playgrounds with concrete, not softened tarmac
Yeah.
or wood chip and stuff like that. Just a completely different world. And it was normal, and everyone, yeah, you're on these swings and roundabouts, which are literally death traps,
Yeah.
would be considered death traps today, and it was normal.
Yeah.
You just got on with it. You didn't think anything about it, and the world has become so sanitized,
Hmm.
and
That's probably the right word as well. Sanitized.
yeah,
That's exactly it.
yeah, and you just it's the innocence of back then. Okay, we know things weren't right in a lot of respects in the 70s. It never has been. We live in a construction, a simulacrum that isn't geared
Yeah.
for human beings. You know, you think about it, you go and live out in the wilderness for 2 weeks. We've spoken about this before
Yep.
on the on the podcast. How we're just not adapted to living
Hmm.
in nature.
No, not anymore.
No,
I think
um,
we would soon adapt because we'd have to
yeah,
if it went that way.
but also it'd have to be within a community as opposed to on your own.
Yeah.
You try surviving on your own,
Yeah.
and you know it would just be so harsh. So we do
Hmm.
need a society, but it's you know that's the dichotomy of this life or that life,
Hmm.
etc. Yeah, it's really become apparent how much we now rely on society. It's gone so far that way, and of
Yeah.
course we were pretty much as humanity forced off the land through the Industrial Revolution.
Hmm.
Um, but of course that's the history that we're given.
Yep.
But we know now through archaics, for example, how societies ebb and flow, how they
Yep.
start up, how they rise, become amazing empires, etc., and then they crash
Hmm.
with a cataclysm, etc. So at the
Every
moment,
empire falls, as they say. No?
what's that?
Every empire falls, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. And but then you also look at what's going on at the moment, and you can see this particular culture and society crumbling as we speak.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely,
I
and
don't think it takes much to take a step back and become aware of the whole situation rather than just certain outlets are telling us
yeah.
that you feel like the end days are coming, so so to
Well,
speak.
this is it. I mean, this is all biblical prophecy and all the rest of it. But
Hmm.
even the most cynical of people about conspiracies and stuff like that, you ask them just without going into that conversation about
Yeah.
anything conspiratorial. You ask them, so how do you think the world is these days? How do you think the world's gone? Not, no one's going to turn around and say, yeah, I think it's a much better place. Everyone can see
Yeah.
things are just,
Slowly getting worse.
yeah. And then you listen to music, for example, from the 70s. There was
Hmm.
something came on. Alexa put a tune on for me yesterday on it was one of the radio stations. I think it was Greatest Hits. Was interviewing Billy Idol
Right.
from of 80s
Hmm.
pop punk fame, and he was talking about the late 70s and how things were changing. They played a couple of records, and it's talking about the demise of society there and how much it's falling
Yeah.
or fallen, and you're like, that was 40 years ago, and it's just gone like that
Still happening.
ever since, and it's still happening.
Hmm.
But on the plus side, it's still been happening. It's still been going downhill. Obviously, there's been massive changes, but guess what? We're still here.
Yeah.
You still have a choice as to whether you're going to function as a positive person in life
Yeah.
or a negative person.
Hmm.
You have a choice as to whether you react to situations, whether it's within your own household
Yeah.
or whether it's to the,
Yeah.
the bigger macrocosm. So, um,
And I think if we all do that, we all take our own responsibility to be that positive person, to create your own reality in a positive way, rather than, oh no, it's all crumbling away, the world's going to shit, so to speak.
yeah,
Then if enough of us do it, then the collective as a whole, things can start to change in society, can't they? But
they can, but then that very much ties in. We saw during the lockdowns, groups came together,
hmm
groups were formed,
yeah,
and I've never been a group type person. It's just not in me to like, there was these different groups that were um, forming and all the rest of it. But very quickly, I say very quickly, within 6 months or whatever, and I was involved with them, but I wasn't.
hmm
So I was there just, because it was still, whilst the whole world was going nuts and falling for this psyop, um, it was still interesting to see what was going on the outside of that. And by being an observer, you don't get drawn into the game.
yeah, of
And then,
course,
of course, when you're drawn into a game, then you don't see the trees for the
yeah,
woods.
yeah,
Um, but certainly within a year, you could see it crumbling from within. And I said to my mates at the time, I said, it's all very well having these groups. I said, but these people haven't done any work on
yeah,
themselves coming up to this. They see that the world is wrong. They can see what's going on is wrong, and they don't want to be any part of it.
hmm
So let's all come together. But then they bring all their own baggage with them.
yeah,
And so what happens after a certain amount of time, you start to see
yeah,
these fractions take place.
hmm
Fractious situations occur because personalities clash.
yeah,
Some people want to take the lead role, and other people think, well, who are you to be telling me what to do?
yeah,
You go straight back, and some people, through their egos, want to be in charge and start leading the way. Whether there's infiltration involved as well, you've always got that because
yeah,
they want to steer things into chaos rather than these communities come together. So it's such a again fine line, divide line, and
hmm
subtle thing between having these alternative communities which are going to be workable, etc.
yeah,
Um, and although what you just said about and society becoming a better place because people are waking up, etc., um, that's still such a tiny, tiny minority.
percentage, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it really is. I think as well, the way I see it and how I kind of meant when I said that comment before is, if you sort of go home and take responsibility, and you create within your household, you create your environment and your reality of what you want,
yeah,
and then hopefully that would reflect onto other people and liberate others to then maybe. But like you said, you made a valid point, is you have to do the inner work,
yeah,
because there can be things that take over and egos that take over, where even in your own household we know that happens. So
yeah, yeah. Well, this is quite um, what's going on at the moment, especially with the younger generation. This is quite poignant for us at the moment. Is the new generation being brought up? Say the millennials onwards,
hmm
they are so addicted to the screens,
yeah,
to gaming, to social media platforms, etc., that that in itself is literally tearing society apart
yeah,
because there's no interaction. If you're not having interaction, like this video yesterday about the 70s and 80s, everyone was out, kids were outside playing.
yeah. Even like, I grew up in the 90s and I was like that.
Yeah,
Like, you'd come home from school and then you'd be out until the street lights come on, and then it was make sure you're home before the street lights are on.
yeah,
And we had like PlayStations and other gaming consoles growing up, but it was
yeah,
like every now and then you'd play them. It wasn't like all day, every day.
yeah,
Even the phones, now
yeah,
everything's just there. People
yeah,
don't need to have in-person interaction, because, well, why would I leave my house and go all the way over town to see this person when I can text them and get a
yeah,
reply?
yeah. They
Whereas
still
we
get
used to,
that social interaction
yeah,
just from their
that's it.
bedrooms.
So they don't need to leave, do they?
You know, and so I spoke to someone the other day. They're not even they're on the frequency really of the old school frequency, but they were talking about what the world is going to be like in another 15 years with this generation that's completely caught up in
Mm-hmm.
the world of AI, for
Yeah.
want of a better word. Where are they going to be? Because they're going to be the adults that are taking over. But then you've got the generation behind them coming through.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, it's scary," and it's like, "Well, it is, but what can you do? This is why it's so important to take on board. You can't change the world. Anyone who's listening that's still thinking that, you know, putting all their energy and time and effort into building a better world, trying to build a better, you know, I mean, you were up against it before,
Yeah.
but you could see how people got brought in, especially with the background I come from.
Yeah.
You could see why my mum and dad were sold on trying to change society, trying to change the world, revolution, and all the rest of it. You could see why, but that was an old frequency, really.
Yeah.
But the more time's gone on, and now obviously with my background and my experience over the years, you realise you can't change the world.
No.
You got, you know, the world is what it is. This place that we live, and you can only change
Yourself.
your own world.
Yeah.
So that saying of we live in the same world, but we're in completely different universes,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see that.
Yeah. 100%. Makes complete sense to me anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, talking about doing the inner work, etc. One of the things that I've been doing this week is I've been reading this book. This wasn't really a recommendation from my mate in Ireland, Martin. Hello, Martin, if you're listening. I hope you're well. He just said, "Oh, if you want to learn about demons and demonology,
Mm-hmm.
this is the book," and it's called The Ladder of Divine Ascent. Now, years ago, I was very much into looking um, behind the curtain as who's running this place,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on, etc. So, you know, I became a bit of a hunter, shall we say,
Yeah.
for that side of things on the metaphysical side, because I knew there was something not of this world that was controlling things.
Okay.
And so it was only by doing the HK and learning about what is behind it. And again, I have to stress here a couple of things. One, through doing the HK, you get the results.
Mm-hmm.
You see the results in yourself, but also in your clients. You see the changes made. And so if it was all bullshit, all hocus pocus,
Wouldn't work, would
it
it?
wouldn't work.
No, of course.
Okay, because these are people are coming in that are not have any belief systems
Yeah.
on this sort of thing, but you know they have such a profound change. They're just like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And obviously, the more you work with it as a practitioner, you see these changes taking place both in your students you're working with, your clients, yourself. So it's a real thing.
Yeah.
So it was going to, for me, it was going to be very, I was interested to see, okay, so because this is basically coming from a Christian perspective.
Right. Okay.
And I know Martin has been very much into more of the Eastern philosophy over the years, so I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting to see where it goes. I didn't realize it was going to be of more of a Christian perspective. So I thought, let's see what they've got to say. And there's some good points in here. It talks basically about when you're skewed off the correct path, the righteousness path, should we say?
Mm-hmm.
It's the demons that are
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
And so you think, yeah, you can a number of times in there I've seen that, but it gives the demons too much power.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
it works in some respects. You can see how, but it's all. What I'm trying to say is, it's all separate dimensions of time.
Yeah.
So as we've said before on here, a thought is a separate dimension of time,
Mm-hmm.
one thought to another. So whether that's joy, happiness, appreciation, all of those three are all separate dimensions. So we're multi-dimensional beings in a multi-dimensional universe.
Mm.
So the demons can only affect you, so to speak. And that word in itself gives them, because people's
Gives them too much
relationship,
power.
people's relationship with that word is fear straight away.
Yeah.
And I have to stipulate that they don't have the power over you
if you don't let them.
If you don't let them, and when you stay in your own game,
Mm-hmm.
the moment you go into the dimension of fear, then you're letting your guard down.
Yeah. Opening the doors, aren't you?
You're opening doors.
Yeah.
Been some fantastic examples of that recently, which I won't go into now, but there's still aspects of this. Two aspects of this book, which me and Martin had a brief chat on email over the last couple of weeks. One is the austerity within this book was just bloody mind-blowing. Do you know what I mean? Now, what I mean by that is that it's harsh, and I was like, this is very much written by a proponent of the Old Testament God,
right?
Which through Brashear's work in Archaics, it's proven undoubtedly that the old God of the Old Testament is the demiurge, is the devil,
right?
Basically,
yeah.
So we have touched on that before in here, and it is literally you either stick to this way and stick to this path, because if you deviate either way, slightest either way, you're fucked.
Yeah, that's what the book's saying.
Yeah, and the demons will have you. Blah blah blah, and it's just like, my goodness, what? So there's no scope for, no leeway for making mistakes, for not,
learning from your lessons, and stuff
not
like
being perfect.
Yeah,
it's either you are perfect,
yeah,
or you're fucked.
Yeah,
and that's just like, that is so harsh. Do you know what I mean? And we know really to counter that this where we're living is like a training program. It's like a playground. It's like a game where you do have to navigate. So you can't, anything you do in life, whether it's manual, psychological, emotional, if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn.
That's it. Yeah.
So to be vilified and put in this box, if you don't do everything perfect, then you're never going to get out of it.
Sounds like the book's written by the same person as well.
Well, there you go. But there's other aspects of the book which are absolutely just like, wow, that is really impressive. Okay. Now, the point I wanted to make about this book is it goes into a bit of a, it talks about the different aspects of your journey and what you have to do to complete your journey here. And one of the chapters is called Step 7 is on mourning, which causes joy. And then Step 8, if I can find it, was on freedom from anger and on meekness. Okay, so basically it was saying that those 7th and 8th steps was about, the mourning is about, not as in night and day, but when you're mourning, the like death of someone.
Yeah.
But of course, mourning isn't just about death. It's about a big loss. It's about grief. And grief is basically, we can't get away from death. We can't get away from big loss. This experience is about dealing with that. And by being this culture that we live in so buries the whole dealing with mourning and all the rest of it, so that when it does happen, it hits you like a
brick wall.
Yeah, absolutely, like a steam train coming through. But mourning is actually a necessary journey, but it's also part of the journey to salvation, for want of a better word. Because I would say, and that's not what's coming out of this book so much, but being vulnerable is an important aspect. It keeps us meek, it keeps us humble. And I think one of the words he says in here is quite, I wasn't going to go into this chapter, but it just sort of popped in there. Tears are the product of thought and the father of thought is a rational mind.
Hmm.
So you can see, there's some deep sentences in this book.
Yeah.
Um, if you possess the gift of mourning, hold on to it with all your might. It is easily lost when it is not firmly established.
Okay.
All right. So it's that touches on how important mourning is.
Almost, I took that as well as to when you are in mourning. When you are mourning, is to delve into the emotion of it and like experience it as a whole, so to speak, rather
Yeah.
than just palm it off to one side.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we live in a culture where you're not supposed to show your emotions.
Yeah.
Showing your emotions is it's a
Weak.
no-no, especially if you're a man. Imagine being a man
Yeah.
and you're crying. Imagine doing that.
Weakness in it. That's what
Yeah,
it's seen as.
exactly. And that is a program.
Yep.
Whereas if you're told it's a program, then you've got to walk the opposite way.
Hmm.
Because we know these programs that are embedded within our culture and our society, this
Yeah.
simulacrum, is not for our benefit. You almost got to do the opposite. So it says here, and this is where you can see the Christian connection here, for baptism is the washing away of evils that were in us before, but sins committed after baptism are washed away by tears. Now, I'd put a big question mark against that, because baptism is not about washing away your sins.
Hmm.
That is an absolute not nilk special.
Right. Okay.
Right? Baptism is literally about getting that baby into the game. It's
Hmm.
taking it into another dimension of time, or another dimension.
Yep.
That dimension, who controls that dimension? Like, for example, when religions are made,
Hmm.
it's not made by human beings, it's made in the metaphysical.
Yeah.
This is why you can go to different places, different old churches, um, and they'll put their signature on those old churches in the form of gargoyles, for example, and stuff like that. What the fuck is a gargoyle doing on a
Yeah.
church?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the official reasoning for it doesn't even make any sense.
Right.
So we've long known in HK that these, we'll give it some leeway, even if these religions were not made specifically in the first place by metaphysical
Hmm.
interdimensionals. Let's just say they were started by men and women who had 100%, in their hearts, this is what they wanted,
Hmm.
for people to follow, to make them better people, for example, and to, have a closer relationship with God. So let's just say, well, it's been infiltrated. You've only got to look at the state of the churches with the paedophilia and the cover up that goes on. It's such a contradiction in
Yep.
your relationship with God and all the rest of it.
Hmm.
Anyone who's going to argue against that is just, they're not really thinking straight, are they?
Of course not. No.
All right. So baptism, for example, is basically taking that baby out of its own game, because it's under the umbrella of the parents.
Yep.
And if the parents are not where they take that bit, they get washed. Because it's happened a number of times in HK on practice courses, that the particular dimension that you're looking at will go to baptism or Holy Communion or confirmations,
Okay.
and then you're having these interdimensionals
So
removed.
it's almost like a bit of a, I was going to say ritual, but like a gateway into
100%.
taking it from here and
It's both a ritual and a gateway.
yeah.
So you're in that game. Now, it can only affect you when you're within that dimension as such.
Yeah.
But that dimension may be connected to, let's just say, for example, public speaking.
Hmm.
We'll just say, I'm not sure. I can't remember my own personal journey with that. But it's a situation where, because it has tended to come up on courses as opposed to it happens with clients, for example. Because again, I'll reiterate, we don't ever make an assumption before we get started. spirit will take you to where you need to go, and most of the time it's pretty much benign situations.
Yeah.
So with these situations where you're clearing from being baptized or being Holy Communion or confirmation, it may, the effects of that dimension, maybe let's just say public speaking.
Yeah.
So maybe that was the first time Holy Communion, for example, was the first time you were actually having to be up in public, and maybe someone said something to you that you had to, and you just completely froze.
Mm-hmm.
But that dimension, within that dimension, that's controlled
Yep.
by the interdimensional.
Yep.
Okay, so I hope that is making sense. It's so difficult to explain, as we found out with one of your relatives recently, trying to explain how these things work to people who, it's just like, that sounds completely bizarre. And we might touch on that before we finish.
I'm thinking now, to try and like simplify it, maybe, is, so say you've got a fear of public speaking that could have stemmed from something that has, like, you've maybe done it before, for example.
Yeah.
But when you were doing it, something had taken over the situation that time, so to speak. So like an entity of some sort, an energy an interdimensional would have taken over, and now you have a fear behind that, or is that the kind of?
The thing is, as soon as you start to explain it, then it's like, should I have used public speaking? Because public speaking in and of itself is very difficult to do anyway.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an entity being involved or anything like that. It's again, it's very much, you cannot take away from any of this your own personal responsibility in everything. So it's never about using interdimensionals as an excuse for behavior.
No, but you just to explain it.
So it's really difficult,
because some people, like, let's just take confrontation. Someone speaking how they really feel to somebody else, even if they know them really well.
Yeah.
That person might have. So like, I approach my partner and say like, I'm feeling like this. I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
But it's taken me a lot of courage, so to speak, and a lot of time building it up in my head to try and get the courage to go and have that conversation with my partner, for example.
Yeah.
That could have all stemmed from like a interdimensional being.
Oh, absolutely.
Getting involved.
So in other words, locking stuff down and not putting yourself in a vulnerable position to talk about stuff. Yeah, that can.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
It can be part of the dimension.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when people who come and have HK sessions are clearing the dimensions that are affecting them, big dimensions, so it's almost compulsive behavior that they can't stop, for example. That's when you find these compulsions, there's some form of entity attached in there, because they can't stop themselves from the behavior.
Yeah. So is that the same thing you were trying to say, like that with the public speaking? And
yeah, in a way. I mean, maybe it's someone goes into complete panic and just breaks down. I mean, I had a nightmare with public speaking when I first started. But I know people that have issues with public speaking to this day, and yet you would never believe it. They're basically very balanced people, but public speaking, and someone within HK who's had multiple clearings, it's not entity based. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
It's something completely outside of that. So again, it's just a case of never making assumptions. But going back to what we were saying about baptism being, it washes away your sins, that's a complete BS.
Yeah.
Because of what is controlling that whole religion in and of itself. So we were talking about mourning, and it says nothing goes as well with humility as mourning. So we know from in the past when we've lost people close to us, and again, it doesn't have to be a death; it can just be mourning a big loss. So you might have a split up with
breakup or something like that. Yeah.
Breakup with a partner, maybe a breakup with family. I speak to so many people that have fallen out with their family and stuff, and again, that is about how has this become such a massive thing.
Hmm.
It wasn't in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
You did have fallouts in families, but it's like everyone you speak to, they've fallen out with siblings or parents, whatever.
Yeah.
It's massive, and this is part of the spiritual journey where you have to go through these humbling experiences,
Hmm.
and the mourning of losing family members or partners, especially if it's been long term. So family is even bigger in some respects
Yeah.
because you've known them since you.
Birth.
Um, that can be even more difficult because you've lost them,
Hmm.
but they're still there.
Yeah.
Whereas when someone dies, you've lost them and it's permanent. So it's
Yeah.
the,
The
the
physical's permanent, but obviously the memories and everything is
yeah,
eternal, isn't it? So
yeah.
read the what read the sentence again that you just read.
Nothing goes as well with humility
Yeah.
as mourning. Basically, it humbles you when you're mourning someone.
Yeah.
It brings you into a more humble position.
Okay. So last weekend we lost a very close family member
Right.
in my family. It's funny we're having this conversation now, like the first podcast since, but
Yeah.
that's like that rings true big time now.
Right.
Because the morning after, it was like it, I'm going through a very stressful time with just things.
Yeah.
Not stressful in terms of in a negative way, just really busy, lots going on, trying to do lots, trying to find time to do everything.
Yeah.
And then the morning after, obviously, my nan passed, it was nothing else matters.
Mm.
So then it just breaks everything down, and you
Yeah.
just, and that sentence rings true right now, what you've
Mm.
just said.
Yeah.
I'm,
Absolutely.
I'm like, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I felt in that moment.
It is so powerful, and it does give you time when, like you say, everything's going on around you. It can be as crazy as you want, but in that moment,
Yeah,
nothing else matters.
no,
It
that's
just
right.
it centers you,
Yep.
and the importance of embracing that
Hmm.
can't be understated because I think you're in touch very much with your spirit, your soul in that moment
Yeah,
because you're in that moment,
yeah,
and we're
100%.
so much, especially in today's society, out of the moment all the time. We've got to do this, got to do that. We're never actually in the moment, and it
Hmm.
brings you in at that moment. But it's raw.
Yeah, like the only thing that I thought about for, let's just say, 24 hours
Yeah.
was just all the memories, all the way she made me feel, the things she used to do, you know, everything that you experience with that
Mm.
person throughout how many years or whatever it's been in your life. And that's true because for that 24 hours, I had like work things I had to do.
Yeah.
So I was still going to work, but my mind was just,
No.
you know,
Yeah.
and that's exactly true what you just said,
Mm.
from my experience anyway,
Yeah.
recently.
So this is why I'm bringing up aspects of this book
Hmm.
because there's some absolute gems in here.
Yeah,
Um, and so there was obviously a reason why I had to go back a chapter
yeah.
on mourning because it's so relevant.
Hmm.
Um, I'll read a couple more from out of this chapter. He who has obtained heartfelt tears will find any place convenient for mourning. So that was a very profound statement,
Hmm.
sentence in and of itself. Uh, Tears are the product of thought, and the father of thought is a rational mind, which I've already mentioned, but you can you can tie that in with what you just said about having to go to work
Hmm.
after the passing of your nan, um, and that was it was your rational mind that is navigating through
Yeah.
such a deep emotional situation. Do you know
Hmm. Hmm.
what I mean? He who in his heart is proud of his tears and secretly condemns those who do not weep is like a man who asks the king for a weapon against his enemy and then commits suicide with it. Now,
That's a good say. That's a good.
there's some amazing sentences in
Yeah.
here. He does use some great analogies and metaphors. So, what that's breaking that down, what he's basically saying is he who is um, proud of his tears, but then,
Someone else doing the same, he condemns.
well, secretly condemning those who do not weep.
Yeah.
Um, So some people
Okay.
are emotional, some people are, have that more empathetic
Hmm.
connection, and so are much more easily brought to tears. Can't think of anyone at hand who's like that. Fucking hell, mate. You talk to a person who has been to funerals where I don't even know the person,
Yeah.
and I'm welling up,
Yeah.
um, just because. And this is before I realised what was going on.
Yeah.
But I'm just feeling all the emotions that are going on.
I was about to say ultra sensitive to energy around you. I'm exactly the
Yeah,
same.
and it's within the New Age movement. It's supposed to be a badge of honor being an empath,
Right.
and for me, it was always just like, oh my god, because I couldn't stop it.
Hmm.
So it was always just like, where's this coming from? And all the rest of it. Um, so, but secretly condemning people who can't weep, which I don't think I ever did.
Hmm.
Um, but that's saying it's like a man who asks the king for a weapon against his enemies and then commits suicide with.
Yeah.
It's not acknowledging what you're actually in that moment, what you're
Yeah.
actually doing, your connection with spirit,
Hmm.
soul on a frequency. It's humbling and it's very powerful.
Yeah.
If you're then going to actually condemn people for not being that way, well,
The same way.
you
Yeah.
completely come out of that humbleness and that meekness.
Yeah.
Um,
That contradiction, isn't it?
exactly.
Yeah.
And then the other one I marked in here is tears often lead frivolous people to pride, and that is why they are not given to some. I'll read that again. Tears often lead frivolous people to pride, and that is why they are not given to some. Why tears are not given to some people.
Hmm.
Um, whether that's because they're not consciously aware enough
Yeah.
in this incarnation,
Hmm.
and so the experiences they go in this incarnation, like why the hell is this happening to me, and not really having the same level of awareness, is because maybe they haven't been through enough lifetimes where they've gone through it enough
Gone
times.
through things. Yeah.
This is why I very much looked into the whole prison planet thing years ago,
Hmm.
10 plus years ago. Is this a prison planet, tricked by the light scenario and all the rest of it? Because when you start looking at things as deep as that,
Hmm.
you know, what happens when we die? Where do we go? What happens to our loved ones? What's going to happen to us? Blah, blah, blah. Most people don't even think about that.
No.
I remember going to a funeral. Oh, it was a wake of one of our friends. This is going back maybe 15 years ago. So he was a fairly young guy. Um, he was one of the first of a big group of circle from back in the day that died. And I heard the conversations going on in the pub. All of a sudden, they were talking about death and about what would happen to them. And I think, these are all Jack the Lads type people saying, well, I think I'm a good person, I'd go to heaven and all the rest of it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, when death came close, in other words, a mate, they started thinking about it.
Yeah. Of course.
But they'd never given it probably a second thought
Before then.
prior
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
Whereas for me personally, the thought of death, and I don't mean it just from a negative point of view, but what we're doing here and what happens afterwards. So this whole thing about you only get one life, it's another not nilk special. Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
Um, you don't only get one life. What you do only get, that saying can ring true in this incarnation at this time that we're living.
Yeah.
You only get one life. I would prefer to say this might be your last chance in this
Realm.
cycle.
Yeah.
There's a lot being said in archaics, and people feel it spiritually that we are coming to like an end time.
Hmm.
Things are changing, and so now's the time to do the work. Because if everyone's feeling that from a spiritual perspective, then one of the things that comes up in archaics, for example, is that at the end of this cycle, we're going back to Genesis, which is basically for a 144,000 year cycle. I ain't really wanting to come back to do this cycle all over again for 144,000
Do you know
years.
what's funny? I was thinking just then after that convo is me and my mum used to have conversations when I was young.
Yeah,
And I always used to be scared of dying. I know we would always say, "Oh, we want like bionic organs to keep us alive forever.
Okay, interesting. See how that works.
Yeah, and now, and then they would just come full circle, and I'm like, nah. Once I'm done here, I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
You know.
but you can see how AI ties into,
Yep. That's now.
because, and that, that's brilliant the way that's come in, because people do fear death. They fear it so much they won't even look at it.
Yeah.
It's like it's not even there.
Hmm.
Then someone close dying, like a close friend, which is different to a family member,
Hmm.
has a different sort of energy to it, because it's people you socialize with and you've lived the same sort of lives, blah
Yeah.
blah blah. And hearing these conversations going on in the pub was like, wow, you don't realize how people will not even touch that subject,
Yeah.
and then it comes close, and they're like, oh well, I think I'll go to The
Yeah.
Good Place. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And anyone wants to watch a funny series, The Good Place is a
You told me about that last
yeah
time. I need to
yeah
watch that.
it's a fantastic. It touches on some very good poignant points, and it's hilarious as well. Um, Time has pushed on, and I haven't even got to the chapter about anger, but which was the other chapter we was going to talk about. But you can see from that the importance of mourning,
Hmm.
the importance of being in connection with your emotions and thinking beyond just what's being caught up every day. But you can only do that if almost you force yourself to,
Yeah.
because part of the trick with what's going on is to distract us.
Yeah.
You know, that distraction is massive. The technology with the phones, etc., is one of those,
Completely.
but that's just an aspect of it. But that what's coming through the screens and the phones taps into all of the emotions
Hmm.
that we're almost addicted to having through the central nervous system.
Yeah.
Whether that's
The dopamine hits of
yeah,
laughter and that kind
yeah,
of thing,
but
or
also
the opposite.
conversely, on the opposite
Yeah.
of anger
Yeah.
and fear,
Yeah.
we
If you
are
get stuck down some of the media holes and stuff like that, it
yeah,
drives people crazy.
yeah, absolutely. But there is almost like a human addiction to feel emotions, because we're plugged in through the central nervous system to this place,
Hmm.
and we have to feel emotions. We have to sense them, and we want to feel them, but the compulsion to have the negative aspects of emotions is us being part of being multidimensional beings in a multidimensional world.
Hmm.
So, from that perspective, we find ourselves drawn into these things, and that doesn't have to be through technology. That can be through relationships.
Hmm.
So,
I was just thinking through like business relationships, how you're saying about like we're stripped of our emotions, but then we're also fed them in different ways. It's like in business, you have to almost be emotionless to be able to negotiate in business type things.
yeah,
But if it's almost if both people felt their emotions
yeah,
and they both thought, rather than just trying to go out for all they can get, but still try and keep you happy a little bit, if you just come to an agreement
mm,
based on where you both felt was fair and
yeah,
felt was happy
yeah,
on the emotional side of things,
yeah,
then it would probably work a lot better for a lot more people.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Rather than one always feeling,
yeah,
just because I've experienced that recently as well through business, so it makes me.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That is,
But it's the world of just zero emotion, hustle, hustle, grind, grind, scroll, scroll.
yeah,
You know?
that's the download and the frequency that we live in.
Yeah.
Again, we can point to the fact that this world, we can't change this world.
Hmm.
It's the frequency this world
Is
works on,
yeah, it's programmed that way.
um, which again ties into the old God of the Testament, and this being His realm. It's built that way. Let's go back to pure basics.
Hmm.
Predator prey world we live in. The natural world sees it fit and normal that you can rip the head off an animal,
Yeah.
or we can look at the insect world where, for example, it's almost like a slow death, a torturous death.
Hmm.
Or Erin was telling me the other day about what insect was she talking about? It might have been the praying mantis. Is it the praying mantis she might have even mentioned another animal, where after the male and female are copulated, the female eats the male.
Yeah, I've heard something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
I mean, whether it's ripping the head off something to kill it and eat its organs, or killing something in a most grotesque and violent way, or whether it's that side of things, no compassionate God would set a world up like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I mean, you're talking about base nature there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I completely comply with the God of this world is not.
What party
Let's have
going
a
on
little
next door
dance.
now?
It's not compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
The true God, the true creator, isn't connected to this world in the same way. It's many steps away from
Yeah.
that. Do you know what I mean? If you consider, a lot of people just find it difficult to connect with their own spirit.
Mm-hmm. Most people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let alone.
Most people don't even know they've got a spirit.
No, of
That's
course.
what's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, but it's not, because it's what they've been
Well, yeah,
they've
of
been
course.
brought up
Yeah.
from, and that's the whole point of this simulacrum, is
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't want you connecting with your spirit.
No. Strip you away from your power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the moment you realize you are a powerful spiritual being, the moment that takes place, you're then empowering yourself.
Yeah.
You're
No
now
longer
giving
be
yourself
controlled.
a chance to become an empowered person.
Mhm.
So it's it is designed that way, and this is why I touched on earlier about the prison planet, tricked by the light, and all the rest of it. Must have gone off on a tangent, Scott.
Must have.
The point I was trying to make was, if we didn't have the mind wipe, so in between lives,
Mm-hmm.
why don't I remember my previous life, for example? Do you know what I mean? How can blah blah blah? So there must be a mind wipe, which then gets people into the game of, well, this must be a prison planet, or why our minds been wiped. It wouldn't work. This place wouldn't work if we remembered our previous
Of
lives.
course.
The hardcore spiritual lessons that this place gives you have to be through something that you're really going to almost get drawn into and to feel,
Mm-hmm.
not just on the nervous system, but on the emotional side of things,
Yeah.
but psychologically, intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
It's the whole package.
Yep.
And this is why we haven't even got to the chapter. I mean, I'm sorry, guys, we're not even going to get to it in this podcast.
We'll have
This
to part to it.
This is almost like a setting up for where I'm going with this. HK is such an amazing tool for clearing these big things.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've found myself, and as some of other students have found, there can still be aspects that, I think I mentioned it before. To try and explain it, it's quite difficult. The scapegoating.
Yeah.
HK basically saved me from going down a dark path when it all kicked off.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because it was just the injustice of it all was just palpable. Do you know what I mean? But the HK got me through that unbelievably, because I know how I was, or having always been a reactor. There could have been some pretty hardcore reactions, whether that affected my immediate family or outside of the family, etc. It would have been eating away at me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not healthy. So clearing them, but reading that article on scapegoating was so important for me. It touched me on such a deep level that I realised that being able to intellectualize, we come back to that saying about the rational mind and
Mm-hmm.
mourning, and what was it? Mourning is the father of thought.
Yeah.
Because it was something like that. Thinking and processing, because spirit will only go where your thoughts go.
Mm-hmm.
You have to direct spirits to what you want. So the two it's all tied in. You can't just have the one without the other. So the whole package, the whole deal is understanding things from my perspective, understanding things intellectually, with that rational thought process as well as on a spiritual level, which
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily require the emotional and rational thought when you're clear in that dimension. But again, it's a very subtle divide line between once you've had something cleared, not then drawing yourself back into
Yeah, I
that
was about to say, failing
dimension.
the tests that
Yeah,
it will throw back at you afterwards.
absolutely. Those tests can come in if you're going to react the same way. So we say in HK not to think about it. You don't want to invite that dimension back in. So again, it's that subtle line of where you having a rational mind to think about what's gone on in your life, these bigger things and these lessons that life brings up, thinking about them, but not being emotionally attached to them. So I think by being emotionally attached to them as you would have been prior to having it cleared, for example, you're then inviting it in if you're emotionally reacting. So it's a thin divide line. So sort of rounding it all up, this book has brought some profound intellectual points to me that have tied in with my emotional nervous system journey in this realm. So, in sort of finishing up this place, this is it has to be a hardcore experience for us to navigate and learn from. So if you've had previous lives where you've had that, you don't have to remember those previous lives and go, oh yeah, I made that mistake. Obviously, when you do HK and you'll go back to previous lives and you see how things have tied in to this lifetime, the same repeating patterns are happening. You look back, okay, I did that in the last lifetime, or this happened in the last lifetime. You can see how that's now been transferred into this life, because within that dimension, I had that same thought in that dimension, it triggered it off again. So until you go back to the original cause of that thought and clear that, which might be in a previous life, these things can follow through. So, again, selling the HK ticket, what an opportunity people have to clear what conceivably could be lifetimes of these dimensions coming over and over again, because again, it's not really selling HK, it's you being connected with your spirit. And your spirit knows how, why, where and when something started, and why you've had to experience that in this lifetime. So only your spirit knows that. Only your spirit can change it.
And that'll keep repeating until it's changed.
This is the scenario, really. Do you know what I mean? That's been very much the experience on this HK journey for me. So, and everyone who's become a student of it, and people who have sessions, they can see that. So, from that perspective, you can see how this life that we live gives us everything we need to experience. So don't get caught up in the individual dimensions. I think this is what I want the takeaway to be within this. Because any dimension can be triggered at any time. And sometimes what will take place is, if you're wanting to have clearances, you will make these clearances. And then another dimension will be triggered, because you've almost made this pact with your spirit. Well, I want to be clear. I want to clear these dimensions. And as it's getting late in the game, sometimes there's a lot of stuff to clear. So it's like, okay, you cleared that one, next one, next one. At some point, it's okay. You might have to say, okay, I've done enough for now. I just need a break and I need to reflect. As opposed to, for example, you don't go to the gym and push 200 kilos of weight all day.
That's it.
You know what I mean?
You need that recovery time.
You need recovery time.
That's the same with HK after.
The
defrag, so to speak, and then
But we can't get away from where we're living.
No.
What we're doing. It's here. It's real. So deal with it.
Not
getting caught up in individual dimensions, individual issues, can take all your energy and time and emotional space. It's just a case of acknowledging it's there. And okay, park that to one side and continue
Hmm.
working and living in this world with that spiritual awareness that this is a spiritual game, it is a
Yeah.
spiritual journey that we're here to navigate.
Okay.
All right, so
We'll close this part off for now.
yep, and then
We'll
sorry
come
I
back
didn't
and
get to that.
revisit
Yeah,
this.
I thought there was only a couple of highlights in the morning page. I thought
Yeah.
I'd get straight onto the anger.
We always go into tangents anyway.
Well, it's it, and I think part of that is the importance of delving deeper into it,
Yeah.
and
To build
looking
the
at
full picture kind of thing.
looking at the nuances.
Yeah.
I did get some great feedback from Jen. Hello, Jen. I know you always watch these podcasts, and she was just saying how much she enjoyed the podcast,
Great. That's good.
and how she has to re-listen to them.
Hmm.
And I don't think that myself. I think I might be gassing on a little bit and spouting stuff, but for people who are on the journey, there's some invaluable information in here. So
100%.
I'm glad it's. Um, I
But
felt
for me, it's the same. Like we've had conversations over the past year or two that pop up again in the podcast, and even for me, it's good to revisit and
yeah,
remember those things because
yeah,
it's things apply to you at that moment of time when you need them, so to speak.
yeah,
To keep listening over and over. It's the same with podcasts we listen to as well.
yeah,
Sometimes we listen 2 or 3 times to
yeah,
get
yeah. Absolutely.
understand it more and
Yeah, because there's always different. Even within one sentence, it can have different
yeah,
connotations.
that's
So
it.
yeah, we'll be back soon,
Okay,
and
so we'll end the episode 8 part 1 there,
yeah,
and we'll continue it with a part 2. We'll try and get one in this week in an evening or something to
okay,
if we can.
yeah.
So it ties in nicely.
Nice summer evenings and all the rest of it.
That's it. Okay, guys, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
If you enjoyed this one, like, comment, and subscribe. I know you don't like saying it anymore, so I will. And yeah, we'll have the next part of this episode up hopefully shortly after this one. Thank you.
Cheers.